Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here and coming to our fireside chat where we're going to talk about shifting privacy left with privacy code scanners. I'm Debra Farber, and I'm here with Prashant Mahajan. Thank you. First I'm going to just do a little intro. I'm an advisor for the rise of privacy tech, so it's my delight to be here today. But I'm also an advisor to Privado. And so I've been working with Prashant and his team for well over a year as they've been bringing their product to market. A little bit about me, I've been in privacy and data protection for 17 years, so a really long time. And I've seen a lot come and go and seen everything kind of evolve over the past 17 years. So we'll talk a little bit about that in the context of this technology. I had privacy roles at Visa, Big ID, where I was an advisor there before coming on board as a privacy strategist, and thus kicking off my desire to really work in innovation and with privacy tech. I also, definitely want to point out that the way that we met was through the rise of privacy tech. This organization matched me as an advisor to him as a founder. So definitely, if that's something that interests you, and whether you're a founder seeking an advisor, or someone who's been in this space for a long time, or a privacy engineer, or someone who really wants to be matched up with a founder, you can absolutely do that. I'd love to then pass on the baton to you, Prashant, to give an introduction.
I just realized that we don't have other panelists, so it is just two of us talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm Prashant Mahajan, co-founder and CTO of Privado.ai. We help companies ship privacy-compliant product and features. We have developed a static code analysis tool that lets you track usage of personal data across your applications. And before starting Privado, I was an early engineer at an advertising technology platform company where we were using personal data to show relevant ads to the user. So I find it very ironic and funny that once upon a time I was using personal data to make users click on ads. And here I am on the extreme end asking companies to minimize the use of personal data. But very excited to be here and talking to all of you on the need of shifting privacy left.
Yeah, so on the topic of shifting privacy left, I was actually just speaking to someone in this room who looked at this panel name and was like, yeah, what does that really even mean? And so, we've been hearing shifting security left for several years now, and just wanted to have your opinion of what do you see the concept of shift left mean? We're starting to see it, that kind of language from more privacy tech companies as well.
Right.
So what does that mean to you?
So I think digitization has accelerated a lot in last couple of years. Nowadays, every company is a tech and data company. Large part of your workforce is on the technology team. And inside this technology team, there are several different teams, such as front-end, back-end, big data, analytics, machine learning. These individual teams, they are autonomous and empowered. What it means is that they can have their own processes, they can have their own tools, they can choose their own third-party software. So as a result of this, you will end up having very diverse tech stack comprising of tens of languages and framework, several different cloud-native and on-premise data storages, and thousands of open-source third-party libraries. And these teams, they continuously ship code on a daily basis using modern-day CI/CD tools and processes. And they end up shipping something which is incompatible with what you have in your privacy policies and data processing agreements, leading to fines. And if you look at your privacy compliance and risk function today, they are really sitting outside of these engineering walls. And that's a big problem, because they will not be able to do their job effectively. That's where there is a need of shifting privacy left. You really need to start scanning the code, integrate with core developers such as CI, CD, pull request, really eliminate that friction which is out there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And well, I also want to pick to the part where you've switched from being like really working in the ad tech space to now moving here. And how does that translate to your shift left mentality?
Sure.
Personally,
In my previous organization, when GDPR came into effect in 2018, we had to do a lot of work. We had to set up a team of 50 engineers and reorient our product processes, tools to put appropriate privacy controls in place. And that was a time there was a realization for me that these privacy regulations and laws, they are going to have huge impact on the way tech companies are collecting and applying personal data for solving various different business use cases. So I started digging deeper, and then I understood how invasive these data collection practices were for end consumers. And that really made me thinking and inspired me to be part of something where I can help businesses do the right things for the customers.
that makes sense. That's inspiring. And we're glad that you came to the right side or the ethical side of things. Okay, so you've mentioned to me before also that developers need to use and share data in line with the privacy notice. But what are some of the data misuse? Some areas of data misuse that you're seeing, I guess, coming out of the code or engineers that are accidentally, I'm sure.
Yeah, sure. So data usages continues to be the reason for fines. This is not to scare you all, but there were a couple of recent examples where social media company was fined for using phone number for marketing purpose, and they had originally collected it for two-factor authentication. There was this dating app which was sharing data with Google Analytics, and they were fined. So things like this, they will continue to happen. And if you look at the tooling which is available today, there are good tools available which can do your data discovery, cataloging, restricting access of data, but that's more on the right-hand side of the cycle.
And define the left hand on the right-hand side of the cycle for us.
Left is where all the action is happening, like your applications being developed, data being collected, processed. Right is after all the processing has happened. Right is at the rest where your data being stored. Right? So there are good tooling available there. These are good tools. They do what they are supposed to do. The challenge there is these tools are very reactive in nature. So your product engineering teams, they have already collected, processed, used data for various different purposes. So it's very difficult to go back and change things. There is a huge cost of retroactive fixes. And your developers, they continue to access the personal data through the code, and they might use it for purposes that you may not have accounted for, or you have not captured that as part of your privacy policies.
That makes a lot of sense. So what I'd like to do now is kind of ask a few questions, like kind of go through different personas and stakeholders within organizations, like, to better understand how they will think about shift left and how, tools like Privado can be helpful to each of those stakeholders. And so the obvious one, the first one is the engineer, the privacy engineer. And so with that, with the last panel deep dive into what is privacy engineering. So for our purposes, what problems are privacy engineers trying to solve for in the code today or regarding code? And
so what we are seeing is that many executives think that they will hire a privacy engineer and it will magically solve all their privacy problems.
Right.
It's a lot more complex. For starter, privacy engineering is a new branch. There are very few qualified privacy engineers out there. Hiring is extremely difficult. Some of my friends, I know that they have been struggling for a few quarters now. Obviously, this is a problem all of us needs to solve. But let's assume that you are able to onboard a privacy engineer on the team. Now, if you look at ratio of privacy engineer to other developers, it is highly skewed. It is 1:100s and 1:1000s. And these hundreds and thousands of developers, they are writing applications which are collecting, processing, retaining, storing, deleting data. So
perhaps of millions.
So how come on this world you expect this one or two privacy engineers to monitor the work of thousands of engineers across this whole spectrum of data and application lifecycle? I think it's a huge ask. That's challenge one. Challenge two is your privacy engineer is not just a tech practitioner. They are also coach to other developers, right? So they are the ones who are going to define standards, processes, tools which would be adopted internally. So again, the question is, how are you going to scale all of that? That's where you need to start investing in automation. So either you do that in-house, build those capabilities in-house, or partner with someone like Privado who can really help you scale those engineering capabilities. But either way, I think you should consider investing in those efforts. If you are not considering it seriously, you are really setting up your privacy engineer for failure.
That makes sense. So, I mean, the big takeaway for me is that privacy engineers are really like desperate for and wanting and needing, tooling that helps them scale privacy practices.
Right.
And so, what about the developers, the subset of privacy engineers, right, who are writing the code? How do they balance the goals of compliance with compliance requirements? Very often, as I have learned in the Privacy Engineers Manifesto written by the wonderful Michelle Dennedy, in that, really opened my eyes years back to show that, like, lawyers the requirements for an organization are very broad, right? Like reasonable security practices. And, an engineer cannot code to reasonableness. That's just not something you can test.
Yeah.
And so how do you balance those challenges or suggest?
So this is my favorite topic because I've been developer for 15 years. So developer incentives are aligned with the business goal. They need to ship product features on time to meet those business goals. And they are very hardworking people, just like all of us are in this room. Their challenge is that their time is finite and your compliance risk requirements are competing with the same time against your business requirements. And as all of us have experienced this before, our compliance requirements, they often take backseat. Naturally, it is understood, business comes first. So how do we solve this problem? That's where I feel that we need a lightweight tooling for developers using which they can take care of this peripheral work without really taxing the speed of delivering business value. And I feel that security world has done that exceptionally well. So we really don't need to reinvent the wheel. Just take a leap from security world and replicate that for the privacy world.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, especially since it resonates with the concept of shifting left, the concept of scanning code, the concept, like, these are concepts that the security world have been deeply embedded for many years, and privacy tech is about 10, 15 years behind security. So wherever we can take what the security industry's done and then replicate that within privacy, or I should say, embed the privacy requirements into the processes that the security teams have already set up, I think the better leverage we have. Yeah. Okay, and then so what about your other privacy professionals? So more of your operational folks, the ones that are your governance, risk, compliance, privacy professionals. They use frameworks like the GDPR, and which focuses a lot on accountability, and they're mapping against that along with other risk frameworks. And they're trying to prove what data types they process and what purposes, and and they're trying to figure out your records of processing activities and trying to discover all that data. Like, they've got these challenges that they're working on. So for the past 3 to 5 years, the vast majority of resources in most organizations have gone to legal, and well, I wouldn't even say 3 to 4 years. I have that here, but for my 17-year career, the vast resources go more towards legal and GRC than really anything else, because in order to meet, I believe, because of the accountability requirements, you need to show proof of managing data in a certain way, and therefore that is what the lawyers focus on. That's what the main business focuses on. So, that's the problem as I see it, but how does the engineering team deal with limitations of this top-down privacy requirements and data protection processes?
Yeah, that's a great question. So many organizations, they have this top-down PI, DPI process where you are relying on human judgment. You are expecting people to do right things. You expect your privacy tech team to come to you for privacy reviews, and you expect that this whole process will work smoothly. But in reality, it often falls short, and I'll give you an example. Let's suppose your engineering team, they are trying to implement rate limiting feature for an API. I hope everyone in this room knows what the rate limiting is. Rate limiting is a mechanism by which you protect your servers from an attack that wants to bring it down. So from a remote machine, I can fire millions of requests. I can exhaust all your resources on a server, and I can bring it down. It's a very simple change for engineering, and how to solve for this. You basically keep a map of number of requests and IP or device ID against which those requests are coming from, and you measure that against a time window. And if they breach certain threshold, you basically stop blocking requests from that machine. Nothing fancy, very simple change for engineering. But let's suppose that same API was also collecting geolocation of the user. Now with the combination of geolocation and device ID, I can actually start tracking the movement of the user. And it's a huge privacy risk, right? So your engineering team, it's a very simple change for them. They may not realize that this simple change of theirs can have this privacy risk. So what if they decide not to file for an DPI? What if they file for an DPI and they decide that there is no need to mention that we have started collecting device ID? So how do you ensure that your processes are really working, right? So that's where you need automation like Privado, where you are continuously monitoring the changes being done, and these changes can be flagged to you that, hey, this application has started collecting device ID. That's where you can step up. You can go and have that contextual conversation with your tech teams that, hey, why have you started collecting device ID? And then you can ensure that you are having appropriate controls in place to safeguard your customers and businesses.
Yeah, that's compelling, especially since it opens up these conversations so that you can have more cross-functional dialogue in the business. But what is also great about having these automated checks is that, well, besides that it's automation and you have more free human hours, is that it also provides a level of assurance that you can then boast about. If you're using a tool like Privado, you could boast about potentially in the future, once insurance companies realize we do this, code scanning for privacy, not just security, it may be able to get your insurance costs reduced for your business. It may be able to, you could prove to auditors and regulators that you are doing the right thing because you can show them, the dashboard and the code and all that. So, I'm just huge on privacy assurance. I think that's one area that security's got over privacy, and we're starting to make a lot more strides there to be able to prove this. And then last but not least is Privacy Council. We do have some in the room today, I'm sure are also watching virtually. And, I could see how taking a top-down approach from, around DPIAs and risk and legal requirements with a bottom-up tooling like Privado and code scanning can really be valuable to the legal risk, the GRC teams, even though they're not the ones responsible directly for it. What are some of the concerns that those teams have regarding privacy, and how does shifting left, really, how will that support them in those goals?
So privacy policies and data processing agreements are the means through which lawyers and companies are committing to users in B2C space and customers in B2B space on how are they going to handle the personal data, right? But unfortunately, there is no way currently for companies to enforce those commitments in the products and features being shipped. And that kind of leads to all sort of breaches. There was this period tracking app where they were saying that they are not sharing data with anyone, but in reality they were sharing data with Google Analytics. It was found out, and there was big hue and cry about that, and they were fined. So instances like this, they will continue to happen unless there is a way for companies to really enforce those legal commitments as part of your privacy policies and DPAs to enforce in the code itself. And that's what exactly we want to help you by building Privado.
Excellent. So we're going to move to Q&A and skip the last question I had.
Okay.
But if there aren't, so who has questions for Prashant? Okay, great. We got one coming up.
Hey, Prashant, so you were at Pepper with me. I don't know if you noticed in the Slack channel, there was a question or comment posted saying that shift left was actually kind of implied an antiquated sequential process for development, and that many companies are kind of embodying the Facebook break things, move fast and break things motto in development. So in any comment on that, and in specific, how privacy code scanners might work in those sorts of development environments?
So I guess in the move fast and break things context, it would be like, I'm assuming that you're iterating quickly on new products and trying to get them out to market. So how would a company that's got that engineering mentality of like, let's iterate quickly and just get product out to market and then fix it how could you use code scanning to, I guess, get better privacy? Is that a good summary?
So agile versus waterfall.
Right. Yeah,
Right,
with an
right.
agile process.
That even makes this case even more compelling because, things are moved to production very fast and every day some code is being pushed. And again, taking the example of security, right? The way security world has done it, there are various different tools that developers have adopted. And it is adopted in an agile environment where there is this ship and break mentality, right? So it is no different for privacy. That's how I see it. So I think there was a follow-up question, last question that we missed. I see this as a roadblock in privacy professionals that, hey, we may not get help from the tech teams. They already have so many things on their plate. This is more of a mental block, and we really need to get over this, right? You're not really boiling the ocean. You're not reinventing something new. This has been there. Security world has really adopted this really, really well. So what you need to do is partner with security team to bring this change. They are really your champions. Partner with them. Then pick one or two technology teams who would be open and who could become your champion, and then roll out incrementally. But I see this more of a mental block, Jason, to your question. And there were comments in that thread that people were saying that developers, they have so many things on their plate. So for me, I see this as a mental block, and you need to start this conversation, right? You owe it to yourself. If you don't do it, no one else is going to do it for you.
Thank you.
We have an online question, and it's actually tied to one of your comments just now, Prashant. And the question is, what approaches can we take to incrementally shift privacy left without overloading our engineering team? So you mentioned how we should do this incrementally. What are some approaches to do it incrementally?
Sure. So I can give you an example of Privado, like how we deploy Privado for our customers. So first thing is, getting that buy-in from the tech team. So when we go out, the first discussion happens with privacy, and then security and tech teams are involved. And then we do a pilot wherein, we start scanning the code for a few applications, repositories. And then the very first thing we do is basically getting your data map Article 30 reports in place. So we discover some information, and then we send those contextual assessment to developers, the teams that you have handpicked for this trial. So you get them involved, they kind of come, they get familiar with the tool, they give you some inputs. So that's like a starting point. So you incrementally basically then start extending the scope, involving other teams. So that's like first phase of the product, where they are getting familiar that their code is being scanned and this contextual assessments that they are getting, so they get comfortable with that. Second stage is the actual monitoring stage, where whatever changes they are doing, we are flagging the changes, and then you integrate with their CI/CD pipelines, pull request, where we are commenting on the pull request saying that, hey, you just started collecting this new data. And then this is how it happens. And then the most advanced stage is where you are really enforcing it, right? Where you are defining policies saying that, this data could only be used by these 3 applications, and then you are really going to an extent of failing the CI/CD pipelines. So it needs to happen gradually, and that conversation, building that confidence, making them slowly familiar with the processes, making them realize that privacy is also equal stakeholder in the process, and we are going to review things, and we are going to collaborate on how things should be from a privacy lens.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, we only have a few more minutes left. Does anybody else have a question? Okay, if not, I'm going to ask you, what team tip will help most in shifting privacy left? I mean, I think you might have answered some of that already, but is there anything you want to leave the audience with? Actually, you know what? Why don't you, it would be great to tell the audience about some of the open source tooling that you've created for engineers.
Yeah, I think some of the guests in the earlier sessions talked about having this collaboration. So all of us needs to collaborate in defining standards, defining taxonomies, defining database of privacy vulnerabilities, so that all of us can collectively shift privacy left. So open source has been big focus area for us. We have this tool for generating Android data safety report. That's the first tool that we built. And we are going to build a few more tools where it would really make you easy for you to adopt, download something, for your engineers to use, integrate, download, extend. So that's really going to be the focus for us, and looking forward to collaborate with some of you on that front.
Excellent. So with that, do we still have like a few seconds left? Or, well, then I'd say I'm going to use that time to say, please join TROPT if you're not already a member and want to get involved. Become one. If you want to become an advisor, if you're an investor, if you're a CPO or CISO, get involved, help support. This is where you plug in for privacy tech innovation. Get involved. All right.
Thank you, Debra and Prashant. And with that, we are ready for Launch Outdoors.
Woo-hoo.